Hi, I'm Deb Flaschenberg. I'm the founder and director here at Prenatal Yoga Center. I'm also a labor support doula and Lamaze teacher and mother of two. And what you'll be watching to Kegel or not to Kegel, that is the question, was originally taped for Periscope, which is an online video streaming app through Twitter, and it's interactive. So even though I'm giving the information, you might be noticing that sometimes there are comments that are coming up, or I'm answering questions, or I'm just interacting with the audience. So that's why sometimes I'm kind of losing out of the lecture, but going more into answering questions. So maybe you'll join us on Periscope sometime. So I hope you enjoyed To Kegel or Not To Kegel. That is the question. Have a great day. And we're going to talk a lot about the pelvic floor, Kegeling to Kegel to not to Kegel, that is the question. So I kind of have this interesting relationship with the whole pelvic floor situation. So after my first child, I pushed for what felt like eternity, and my pelvic floor really was kind of a wreck. So I was with a physical therapist for quite a while after, and so through that experience, and also just from working with pregnant women, I learned a lot about the pelvic floor. So interesting that yesterday I was taking a yoga class, and one of our old students, it was just an open level yoga class, and one of our students was doing her 300-hour training, and she was just observing it. And so she came to me and she's like, "Hey Deb, I haven't seen you in a bit." And I'm like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And she asked me my thoughts about the pelvic floor. So basically her daughter is 15 months old and she's still having pelvic floor issues. So I said, talk to me a little bit about what's going on. So she said that she went to her OB, who is a man, and the guy just basically said, "Well, have you heard of Kegels?" And so she's like, "Yes, I do Kegels ad nauseum. I am so," and she's also incredibly fit. This woman was a gymnast. She is tight, fit, really strong. And she was saying that,
said definitely Kegel.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
So for some, it's definitely Kegel. Others, it's like, it's kind of the other side. So let's talk a little bit about that. So her doctor's like, "Kegel, Kegel, Kegel." And she's like, "I am so strong." She's like, my pelvic floor is so strong. And I said, I think that's actually part of the problem. So I think when there's kind of this generalization that when you're pregnant, Kegel, 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 everything must be weak, 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 but that's actually not the case. So I think the statistic is about 40% of women actually have a hypertonic pelvic floor, which means actually two-toned, too tight. Now here on where we're located here in New York City, we're on the Upper West Side, so we're close to Lincoln Center. So we get a lot of the ballerinas, the professional ballerinas from ABT, American Ballet Theater Company, come here, and just a lot of dancers in general. And my student that I talked to yesterday was a gymnast, as I mentioned. So, and a lot of yogis have this problem too, that they're so engaged. Now, tight doesn't necessarily mean strong. So what we really want is a balanced pelvic floor. So that's the to Kegel or not to Kegel. So we want to definitely have support. You have the pelvic organs that need support. You have the growing uterus. You have the different hormones that cause softening. You have progesterone, which softens the soft muscle tissue. You have relaxin, which softens the ligaments and tendons. And then you have the weight of the baby on your uterus and your placenta and the amniotic fluid. It's a lot of weight in the pelvic floor. So we definitely need support for the pelvic organs. However, we also need the ability to let go. And so a lot of times people think, I just need so tight. But if the muscles are so tight and engaged, they can't stretch. Think of it just like your bicep. We want the full range of motion. We don't want the muscles so relaxed that there's no support, but nor do we want the muscles so contracted that there's no ability to lengthen and open.
I Kegel all the time.
Okay. Well, let's keep talking about that. So
Yeah.
That's great, but I want to talk really about the sense of balance for Kegel. So what we teach here in the studio is the idea that we want, I call it pelvic floor toning. So I've kind of let go of the name Kegel. I've taught the name Kegel for years and years and years. But now I really want to get more the idea of the pelvic floor balance. So we want the full range of motion, as I was mentioning. So if the muscle's so tight, it actually can't open and stretch, and if it's so contracted, is that a question I should know?
Kegels should not be confined to pregnancy. That's
Absolutely
correct.
not. Absolutely not. Pelvic floor support and health needs to be a whole life situation for men and women. So as I was mentioning, so we want to have the pelvic floor supported, but we also need the muscles to stretch, especially for childbirth. If they're so tight, it's harder for the baby to pass through the vaginal muscles. And then also a muscle that's continuously contracted can cause incontinence just as much as a muscle that is too laxed. So let's talk about to Kegel or not to Kegel. So just kind of reviewing, we want a balance to the pelvic floor. You want support for the pelvic organs, also for the sacrum and the lower back and the pelvis, but you also want flexibility. I liken the pelvic floor to kind of like a trampoline. You want it springy. So in terms of childbirth, when the head is emerging through the vaginal canal and it hits the pelvic floor, it actually rotates. So you want that kind of spring. If it's too flaccid, it doesn't rotate. If it's too tight, it can't emerge through. So going back to the idea, we want balance, strength, and flexibility. So what do I mean by Kegels for that? So I try to think a little bit broader. So it's not just what everyone thinks is Kegels, stop from peeing. That's definitely part of it, but I like to think about, oh, actually, I'm gonna ask Ursula to grab me the pelvis. All right, so Ursula's gonna go grab the pelvis because I'm a little bit of a nut about my props. So we want to think the vaginal muscles and the anal sphincter. So and here is, I don't think we need the baby. So here's my pelvis, ta-da! And oh, thanks for all the hearts. I'm loving that. And feel free to tap away for hearts. All right, so the 4 landmarks I want to talk about. Here's your pubic bone. It's the front of the pelvis where the 2 innominate bones meet. And here's your tailbone. It's at the base of the sacrum, and I apologize, our tailbone's a little crooked. And then here are your 2 sit bones, your ischial tuberosities. So these 4 points, your pubic bone, your tailbone, your 2 sit bones, make a diamond. Does that make sense? You can kind of see it from here too. And this is the outlet of the pelvis. So the way that I instruct pelvic floor toning is that we're trying to energetically draw the 2 sit bones together and the pubic bone and tailbone together, and that's done on the exhale. And then I also instruct the women to engage the vaginal muscles like you're stopping from peeing, but more than that, engage the anal sphincter like you're stopping from passing gas. And now what's really important is the breath we do it on. So the pelvic diaphragm, that's why I think of all the pelvic floor muscles, mirror that of the respiratory diaphragm. So the respiratory diaphragm is basically right up here. So when you breathe, when you inhale, your lungs fill, your diaphragm drops and spreads. And when you exhale, the lungs empty and your diaphragm lifts and contracts. And in my mind, I think of a jellyfish. That's just kind of the undulation of jellyfish. So your respiratory diaphragm mirrors that of the pelvic diaphragm. So we want the same action. Now the deep inhale, that deep diaphragmatic breathing can actually stretch out the pelvic floor. And that's what we want for like my student that was saying, you know, she's in super great shape, but she's still having incontinence issues. She was saying for the last 3 weeks, she's been coughing and she's just been peeing herself. I suspect the muscles are too contracted. So what I told her is to see a specialist, a pelvic floor specialist that can help her with that. But for the homework that I gave her was to focus on balanced pelvic floor, but for her specifically the relaxation. So the way I'm going to teach you kind of the basic pelvic floor toning, and then we're going to go a little bit more, oh, hello, whoever just popped on. We're going to go a little bit more into how to relax the pelvic floor for those women that feel like maybe their pelvic floor is too tight. So again, jellyfish. You inhale, the muscles drop and spread. You exhale, the muscles contract and lift. So think about, just close your eyes for a moment and let your hands rest at your belly. Now take your deep inhale and feel your belly fill, the diaphragm's dropping, the lungs are filling. And as you exhale, this is just a natural release of the breath. All right, so now we're going to add to that. Inhale, think of your pelvic floor, breathe all the way to your pelvic floor, let your pelvic floor spread. Now as you exhale, draw the sit bones towards one another, the pubic bone and tailbone towards one another, and engage the vaginal muscles and anal sphincter.
Oh, her husband likes her laugh too much.
I don't know what to make of that.
Doesn't sound like a problem.
So again, let's go back to that. You're going to inhale, relax the pelvic floor. And now as you exhale, again, engage the vaginal muscles, anal sphincter, draw your sit bones together, pubis and tail towards one another. And again, we're going to inhale, stretch the pelvic floor, and exhale, engage the vaginal muscles, engage the anal sphincter, draw those 4 corners together. Good, and then let that go. So that is really important, that we want the inhale to stretch the pelvic floor, the exhale to lift and tone. Now for the moms, especially my student that was saying so tight, especially my dancers, we really go for the inhale. And for those, I actually think of kind of the reverse elevator Kegel. So for that, I actually think inhale for 3, where you're really spreading the pelvic floor. And then as you exhale, you're engaging for 3. So you inhale, you spread and extend, exhale, engage. Now for my dancers, my gymnasts, my skaters, anyone that had
like
too much.
Pilates Kegel combo.
I don't know what the Pilates Kegel combo is, but I'm glad if that sounds like what it is and that that's being taught. So for the moms, that, especially my ballerinas that come in here, I just have them focus on the inhale, stretch 2, 3, exhale, don't even engage. So let's try that. So if you want, again, you can just close your eyes, visualize the pelvic floor, visualize the base of the pelvis. We're going to start with the idea of breathing down and stretching for 3. So we're going to inhale, stretch, 2, 3, and then exhale, doesn't want. We tone, engage, and lift, 2, 3. So inhale, think of spreading the pelvic floor muscles, breathe down, almost like you're bulging them. And then exhale, engage, and tone. All right, so hopefully you got that sense of the muscles releasing. And then again, for the women that are just too tight and they're thinking, oh, I keep need to strengthen it, it's not that. I like to put those moms, not even in a seated position, I like to put them in a restorative position or even on their side in a sideline position. Now my postnatal moms, when they come back to class, we actually do all this elevated, so the hips are on a block. And I think I have a block I'm gonna grab. I got it. So here's a basic yoga block. We have a lot of people joining, so I'd recommend just kind of re-watching so you can catch the beginning. So basically when the pelvis is on a block, you can see it takes the pelvic organs and it draws them down. So especially for the postpartum mom that just had a baby pass through the vaginal canal and things can feel a little disjointed, it's nice to find this function of the pelvic floor through taking the weight off. So again, the idea is that we want balance in the pelvic floor. We want the ability to support as much as the ability to stretch. We don't want the muscle co-contracted all the time.
I have a partner. I have a partner.
That's great. Yeah. So that was a nice thing that you lock hands as you practice your Kegels. Nice. That's super supportive.
Yeah.
Thanks. Again, so just a quick review. So we want to find that sense of balance in the pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor, the pelvic diaphragm mirrors that of the respiratory diaphragm. So as we inhale, we want everything to drop and stretch, and as we exhale, we want to engage. And then I also, last thing I'm going to do is one last Kegel that I want to, or pelvic floor tone I want to engage. It's the idea of the quick blinks. So this is really good for the women that are, or men, that are so tight they can't release. It's really about just a quick staccato, like a little and so I talk it through, just imagine the muscles blinking. So I'll just do a quick one. I'm obviously not going to demonstrate, but I'll just talk about it quickly. So I just instruct the students, take an inhale, stretch the pelvic floor, then exhale it all out. And then you would just blink the muscles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That quick. And that's going to help your fast twitch muscles and your slow twitch muscles, so you can get a sense. So again, we really want that sense of balance. So the pelvic floor is flexible. It's springy, trampoline-like. It has support. It has give. For birth, we want that support to support all the pelvic organs, but also for the baby to emerge out. We want that spring to help the head rotate. And for the moms that are suspecting that their pelvic floors are too tight, you guys are all about relax, let go, release. So I hope this was helpful. Now I go a little bit deeper into explanation on our website, on our blog, on prenatalyogacenter.com. I believe the blog is called, Is My Pelvic Floor Too Tight or Too Loose? So you can check that out. So for my birth workers, my pregnant moms, for anyone curious, I hope this was good. If it was, maybe you want to give a little tap to the screen just to show your enthusiasm. You can check us on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and I'll be seeing you guys again on Monday. Also, I'm always interested in questions and topics you might have. So perhaps if you have any questions, you can send it on in. Oh,
and this was for incontinence.
Well, incontinence, yes and no. So definitely for incontinence for some that are having that issue, but it's also for back pain. So some people have, because the pelvic floor could be not functioning well, it can affect the sacrum. So if someone's having either pain during sex or incontinence or any sort of lower back pain, that the pelvic floor toning. And then last question is, what is a Kegel?
What is a Kegel?
So that's what I've been discussing in a sense. So Kegels often are just associated with engaging. And I'm focusing more on the idea that we want a balance. So you're engaging the pelvic floor, but you're also learning how to let go of the pelvic floor. It looks like we had another question. Oh, I didn't see
Her husband loves Kegels more than she does.
Sure does. We want a nice supported toned pelvic floor. So yeah, so Kegels are often associated with just tight. We want engage and release. So that's the difference between, that's why I've kind of tried to change my vocabulary instead of saying Kegel, say pelvic floor toning. So it's about the stretch as much as about the flexibility. So thank you so much for joining. If you missed any of this, just rewatch it because we talk a lot in the beginning about the different parts of the pelvic floor and our pelvis here and what we're looking for in a functional, healthy pelvic floor. So have a wonderful weekend. Namaste.